They killed themselves when they woke me.
A few videos ago, we covered the analog horror series Stone Cold, where a brand new disease known as the Medusa Virus began to infect the world. How do you contract this virus, you may ask? Well, it's simple, really. Just the mere act of making eye contact with someone with the virus will leave you infected as well. Being infected always ends the same way, with paralysis that results in you being left like stone. I see why it's called the Medusa Virus. And it doesn't just stop there. This virus continued to evolve more and more with each new strain that was discovered. Something that I didn't pick up on the first time around was that as the original series progressed, this virus was attacking each and every sense of the human body. The first strain meant you couldn't look anybody in the eyes without being put at risk. Then in the next mutation, the virus moved around as a thick orange gas that you had to avoid inhaling, leading you to have to cover your nose. Then the virus began to infect birds that would screech at intense volumes, which would make you deliriously go outside to stop the noise, leading to infection. The virus then was able to get into the food supply, eliminating taste, and the latest strain to be discovered left people with a chilling sensation all throughout the body. That's sight, smell, hearing, taste, and touch all right out the window. Oddly enough, it always seemed like humanity was able to figure out ways around the infection right before the virus would mutate into something else, sending us 3 steps back every time. Could there be something bigger at play here? It definitely seems like it. Well, perhaps today we will finally get our answers since we will be covering the sequel series to Stone Cold, Stone Cold Zero. Sounds like this may actually be a prequel series. As always, if you haven't already, be sure to check out the original series before jumping on over here to fight this infection together. But without further ado, let's go back to the beginning of Stone Cold. But before I let you get too far, just wanted to say if you're new here and enjoy what you're watching, be sure to hit all those neat buttons down below as it really helps support the channel. And if you want to see more, be sure to follow us on Instagram and Letterboxd. Alright, now you can pass through. Stone Cold Zero, The End. Entry 1. To start off this entry, we are met with a little message. This video was deleted from YouTube due to its contents. This video is confidential and contains sensitive information. We're then brought to the good old days of this platform with our Windows Movie Maker style video. We're introduced to Kyrie, who lives in Arkansas, who recently made a discovery they plan on sharing with all of us. While their brother was hiking along a railroad, he came across an old VHS tape. The tape is said to have disturbing contents, and Kyrie has already notified the police. But since their father was killed by this virus, they want to publish the tape here so that the public can be informed. We learn that it's been 4 years since the tape was found, putting us in December of 2001. Something isn't adding up here. But also, Kyrie is one of the only survivors of the 5th strain. Who knows how many people are even alive at this point? We are then shown what was on the tape. We open up and are introduced to our cameraman, Tom Adams. He states that he is making this tape in case something unfortunate happens to him, and he also mentions this company that he's trying to get away from. He says that on his normal commute through the woods he usually hunts in, he came across a mutilated deer with a large inflamed stomach. Tom Adams seems to be very nervous while he is filming, constantly looking over his shoulders. He begins to walk through the woods before he gives us quite the revelation.
The company that I worked for, basically, they said they made the virus, and it was to be a weaponized program.
You're telling me a company created this virus as something to weaponize? Sounds like they got a lot more than they bargained for. According to Tom, he and his colleague Frank were the first to inhale this virus. He says that his eyes feel very strange, and the camera is acting as his eyes currently as he attempts to track down Frank. If Tom is already infected, he's certainly running on limited time. He begins heading towards one of the containment sites, and as Tom continues talking, he starts to develop quite the cough.
The reason I'm talking and walking is because I feel like Frank is out here. He's already succumbed to the virus.
Better move fast, buddy. He takes a small tumble down a steep hill before he arrives at what he calls the containment site.
Now it's leaking into the water as we speak.
I'm gonna be honest here, Tom. I'm not seeing much.
Turning the water into a weird, sickly color.
He claims that the virus has been leaking into the water, and that's why this He claims that the virus has been leaking into the water, and that's why this water is all muddy. Before moving much further, he hears something coming from inside the pipe, and Tom believes it could be Frank.
Did you guys hear that? I think Frank's in there. Frank, it's gonna be okay.
He climbs inside the tunnel, and it sounds like someone is crying in the dark. He goes in a little further, but things don't end up going too well for Tom.
Frank, it's me. Frank. Frank!
We are then met with this odd frame. Now, I'm not sure if this is just me trying to pick out shapes out of nothing, but it kinda looks like a guy on the ground looking up at this big, large, black figure. I could be just totally crazy, however. The last thing we're met with this entry takes us back to a familiar animated format. We see what looks to be Tom's camera on the ground, before we see someone in a construction getup walk away with it in his hands. Text then appears that just says he is infected. Humanity's suicide. I mean, if humanity did create this virus, it isn't wrong. Now I feel like there were two possible scenarios in what exactly we watched here. Either Tom actually went into the containment site, stumbled upon Frank who was already too far gone, and he unfortunately was attacked and killed by Frank. Or this virus was driving Tom mad enough that he thought he was at the facility and he was just delusional. There isn't much to go off with that since the virus hasn't been really known to have those effects. It's just that we could hear as Tom got progressively worse with his symptoms, and there was no facility around him that I could see. However, it was definitely interesting to get our possible answer as to the origins of this virus, and to learn the identity of its first victim. The beginning. Entry 2. Our entry begins on what looks like a couple guys trying to film an intro for some kind of video, except it definitely takes this guy a couple takes.
Hey guys, my name is Jose, and this month we got some new material. God, I suck.
Once that is all over, we cut to a segment just titled The Three Horsemen. Sounds like we've lost one of them. Our first horseman is labeled the Begging Man, and we're then shown photos of who I can only guess is an infected individual. Next is a dreamer, where someone is sitting with his legs up, also completely infected. We then cut out to this scene in a bedroom, with someone operating a flashlight looking around their room, until a knock at the door can be heard. Probably a good idea to not answer that. We then cut to our next segment just called Explanation of the Pompeii Incident. What could this have to do with anything? Apparently, an exploration team with a censored name discovered a new archaeological site in 1979 in the southeast of Italy. They accidentally found a new underground chamber near the Pompeii ruins. As the team continued to excavate deeper, they found a bunch of bodies that were basically statues at this point, and it was initially chalked up to them just being more ancient victims of the Pompeii eruption. If you are one of the very few who are unaware, Pompeii was a Roman city that got completely destroyed by an eruption of a nearby volcano in 79 AD. In an interesting turn of events, black liquid was found dripping out of the eyes and mouths of these bodies, which resulted in further studies. We then listen in on what I believe is a translation from a Pompeii survivor giving his experience on the day of the eruption, describing as the sky turned into a yellow-red sunset early. He says that everyone surrounding him was frozen stiff, and his mother was among them, with leaking eyes and her mouth wide open. But then he goes on to say something that could potentially be very telling.
In the distance, I saw it. Daughter of Phorcys, snake-bearer, cold screaming Gorgon.
You know who one of the daughters of Phorcys was? If you said Medusa, you get a good noodle star. I did theorize in the last video on Stone Cold that there could be something mythological happening in the real world here. Perhaps this is a good clue. But before we get any more information, we cut to a training video on an unknown operation. But if I had to guess, I'd say it's the company our friend Tom Adams was trying to escape from. Part 1 is an introduction to lab safety, and we are a new recruit in the pharmaceutical department. Our narrator says that there has been a recent spike in recruitment after an introduction to something unknown due to the video cutting out. I wonder if it's the virus. But we end up cutting back to our Three Horsemen segment, being introduced to our third, being labeled the Weeping Boy. We're then shown just this one image of what looks like an infected child. What's shown to us next is quite the odd video.
How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you here?
That's difficult to answer.
Whose idea was it that you come here?
a psychiatrist.
After doing some digging, I found that this video is an old interview of a patient with schizophrenia. But we're not here for very long before we return to our training video, which involves removing a sample from a freezing unit and then bringing one of the found corpses into an operating room. Is this how the company got a hold of this virus? Sounds like they didn't create it after all, but they found it and decided it'd be a good idea to experiment on it. One of the steps is literally extract the Medusa virus for future use. So something about this Pompeii incident is a lot different than we were led to believe. Somehow, some way, it sounds more like the virus came from the eruption. After our screen cuts out abruptly, we are met with just one line of text that says, "Who are those men?" Now correct me if I'm wrong, but I wonder if it's possible that these people are somehow still alive. I mean, it's never clearly stated, but I think it's up in the air if once you get turned to stone, you die. Perhaps you are perpetually trapped alive, but frozen stiff. Now that is a frightening thought. We then get one last glance at the training video, and from the sounds of it, these ancient corpses are still capable of transferring the virus through eye contact. We're then back to our bedroom scene, and the knocking has gotten very aggressive. And I'm gonna be honest, this next scene got me pretty good. We are then just met with a distorted face in the darkness. Whoever that was, they had a very unfortunate final moment. After that's over, we listen in on a conversation between someone from the excavation team and a higher-up. He says that when they broke open the cave entrance, an orange gas spewed out. That can't be anything good. What's also interesting is that Dr. Angler was among the men who opened the entrance. And unlike the rest of the crew, he wasn't wearing any protective gear and inevitably inhaled the gas. They report that after he inhaled the gas, he no longer needed his wheelchair, and he began walking. For those who don't recall, the orange gas is a variant of the Medusa virus, and it makes it to where anyone who inhales it becomes entranced to perpetually walk towards more orange gas, leading to being fully infected. This has to be the same Dr. Angler who was reporting on the virus in the first series, but how did he survive for this long? Perhaps he only inhaled enough gas to get him walking, but since it dissipated into the air, he wasn't fully infected. Needless to say, since the crew saw a once immobile Dr. Angler get up and start walking like some miracle, they believe this orange gas is a good thing and that they should continue testing the corpses. Boy, are they gonna regret that decision. We then head into the next segment with another Pompeii video labeled Our Plan of Action After the Pompeii Incident. We hear about some things we were already aware of, like the fact that all the corpses they found were brought to an unknown facility for testing. Since they didn't want the public informed, they kept it secret, leaving the volcano eruption as the truth. But if I had to guess, if this world is going the mythological route, I wonder if Medusa herself was the cause of all this destruction and encased the entire city of Pompeii to stone, only for this virus variant to remain dormant until it was discovered and released thousands of years later. Unfortunately, however, the public will never know the truth. We then return to our training videos once more, and it looks like after the Dr. Angler event, they believe this virus is a cure for paralysis, instead of, causing it. We move on to our third course of training, which sounds downright evil. Animal testing. Sounds like they are testing on deers and dogs, unfortunately. We did hear from Tom Adams he found that deer with an inflamed stomach earlier. Sounds like he was telling the truth. We quickly cut to security footage from inside an operating room, and in the back, you can hear as dogs begin to bark like crazy. This company has reached a new low, I tell ya. Text is then shown that's a little hard to see, but it asks, who is the real monster? Fair question considering we just had to learn about these poor animals. The next segment is strange to say the least. An image of a young child is shown on screen. Looks to be a school photo. More photos then fade in to show him getting older and older, until the photo comes up blank. Was this person taken out by the virus? Now this next scene looks to be in either the facility or a school. It looks like it could be both considering it looks like lockers on the side, but standing in the middle is a clearly infected person, just crying endlessly. I don't know who this cameraman is or why they are approaching, but they quickly learn that it was a bad idea. We then listen in on a girl as she begins to pray and describes how grateful she is to be alive. But this virus has made it to where she hasn't seen her family in a while. She reminisces on some fun family times they had in the past. Now wait a minute. If I remember correctly, inhaling the orange cloud will also give the victim intense feelings of nostalgia and feeling sad about them. Did she inhale the gas? She then goes on to talk about how much the virus has affected her life, given that she has been stuck away from her family and trapped indoors for God knows how long. She also talks about something being in the dark corner of her room. Is she the person with the flashlight in the bedroom? She begs to be taken back to the simpler times, going so far as to ask if God is even there, to which we're shown this nightmarish image looking back at us. To end off this entry, we get a monologue from a very strange voice. From the way this thing is talking, it sounds like whatever this force is that brought the virus upon us is talking. It also sounds like he is responding to the girl's prayer. He tells the girl to come closer, and a very faint image appears on screen. And would you look at that? It's pretty hard to see, but it looks like a statue or carving of Medusa herself. While it may not be literally Medusa herself coming back to disease the whole world, there is definitely some entity that is pulling some strings behind the scenes. Our Tyrant. Entry 3. We immediately open up and are brought to found footage, with someone at this strange hole in the ground, likely the one Dr. Angler and his team opened up. Whoever our cameraman is heads inside and starts to traverse the cavern. Oddly enough, he stumbles upon some weird cave drawings of some sorts. He continues to head further through the cave before a scene cuts out, and in classic Stone Cold fashion, we were interrupted by an emergency alert system directly from the White House. Seems like whoever is left of the public is about to find out the true origins of the virus. The narrator begins to spill the beans, but our footage quickly cuts out and we are met with a letter. My ability to read cursive isn't too strong, but we will do our best. Today marks the first year of my curfew. Little Bill and Ronnie are still under custody of my ex-wife, and I have not been able to see them in almost a week. I really miss them. How can my own kids be kept from me? My house has been exceptionally quiet today, so it seems the flock has passed over a bit. Every day feels the same. I am living life without living. We are then shown photos of a house, likely owned by the guy who wrote the letter. But back to the emergency broadcast system, and our narrator tells the public all about the Pompeii lie, and everyone knows that it was actually the Medusa virus that took out the city. We follow our cave dweller again as he proceeds to make his way even further. He keeps walking until he comes across another drawing on the wall. It looks like the same one as last time. Did he go in a circle? He then sees something off screen, but is cut off by the broadcast system, going on to talk about how an unlicensed research team began extracting the virus from the bodies. Is the guy in the cave the first to discover the bodies? Perhaps that's what he saw off screen. We are then presented with another letter for the next day. Another day. I ran out of food supply today and have to resort to the military's deliveries, which sucks, but I am unable to do anything else. It felt awfully quiet today. I am beginning to hear noises upstairs. Although, I have been having nightmares and crying at night more often. Maybe it's just in my head. I haven't seen another human in too long, and the papers stopped getting delivered. I saw a squirrel outside today and watched it climb the tree outside. Life feels really lonely. I wonder what my friends are up to. What are their names again? Uh-oh, somebody might be infected. Or this is just the extreme case of being locked away and alone for so long. We then see a photo of a poor empty fridge, and a special guest appearance of the squirrel. An image of a blank page then comes on screen, followed by another. But then we get to the final page. There is no point in living anymore. I cannot go an hour without crying, and I feel like I will lose control of myself. I am desperately resisting the urge to put an end to the suffering. I have not eaten today. I was not in the mood. I do not even remember my kids' faces anymore. I am on my breaking points. I am crying. Everything is losing color. I feel like I'm about to fall asleep. What if I wake up without my sanity? I am scared. I saw the devil. I found a new belt today. I have an unfortunate feeling I know where this is going. We get another photo of the house, and then one last photo that tells us everything we need to know about his fate. Now, I couldn't for the life of me find the original video of this, so I'm not sure what the context is here. But this person is talking about how they believe God is currently judging him, and that he is also Satan's prey. However, when asked if they have thought about ending their life as an escape, they just respond with, "Even death will not set us free, because the spirit is immortal." Could be a clue as to if these Medusa virus victims are held alive in their state, or if an immortal spirit of some sorts is who to blame for this virus. We then listen in on a conversation between who I think is a higher-up at this illegal facility. They talk about how they are about to start their animal testing within the month, and it sounds like the person on the other line isn't a big fan of the idea.
We are planning to initiate animal testing in about a month. As soon as the samples are ready and extracted, we can begin sourcing the test subjects. Yes, I understand.
But still, our higher-ups are trying to defend it by saying it's for the greater good. He expects 50 adult healthy deers to be sent to their forest laboratory, which I imagine is where Tom Adams was. And of course, this all needs to be kept incredibly secret. Once again, we are back to the broadcast system, and the truth is still being told. It's confirmed that they believed the Medusa virus would cure paralysis and it was involved in inhuman testing. To make matters even worse, multiple counts of murder, unethical human experimentation, and kidnappings were reported. The FBI is currently investigating the corporation alongside the National Virology Lab. Hopefully, they are brought to justice. Then again, given how much of this world is in chaos, I don't have much hope it'll happen. We're then reminded of what we already know. Avoid eye contact and be locked up in your home. We then get quite the haunting send-off to the broadcast.
If you are still listening, you are one of the unlucky survivors. May God leave us to rest soon. A cure has not been found.
Our next segment then has us in the POV of someone watching the emergency broadcast and getting that dreadful news. The sound of approaching footsteps can be heard, and the girl asks who is there and if they are infected. The voice we get back is the same voice we heard at the end of the last entry, the source of the virus potentially communicating with us. The voice claims it isn't safe, and we see as it looks back at the girl. He says it isn't safe to pray against him, and that he doesn't obey existence and doesn't require a body. Sounds like our virus for sure. He even says he isn't human. The young girl asks if he is God, and in a twisted turn of events, it sounds like he is pretending to be God to her. And just like the last child he spoke to, tells her to come closer, to take his ancient hand. She tries to approach the voice, but when she makes a comment of how God finally came to save everybody, the conversation takes quite the turn. He goes on to say that he is not here to save them, and no one can defy him.
Oh, I wouldn't say free. More like under new management.
And I believe this moment confirms his identity being the entity that is the virus.
They killed themselves when they woke me. Are you aware of your past hiding in caves from the creatures with a spear firm in your hand?
He tells her once again to come closer, and that he can save her. He then tells her to go to sleep, and our frame gets farther and farther away from us, before the series ends. It's fascinating that this virus was the furthest from your traditional virus, but it acted like an evil entity that sought to infect the world. I'm glad that the existence of this entity is only demonstrated as a voice in the darkness. We never see what it looks like, and never fully understand what it is. Is it Medusa's spirit? Is it a demonic entity? Up to you to decide. But whatever it is, was upset that humanity woke it up, and they even went so far as to keep extracting the virus. To play devil's advocate, they did believe that this was a cure for paralysis, but their experimentation went too far when it came to the human and animal testing. Plus, they unleashed an unstoppable plague to the human race. I really enjoy how this series is able to convey this sense of no hope. Everything in this world is just endless dread. At this point, being a survivor of this virus seems like the worst case scenario. Left to be trapped alone for eternity, slowly losing your sanity. But then again, it's possible that once you do get infected, you have to live out the rest of your days as a borderline statue. If you haven't already, I can highly recommend you check out Stone Cold Zero, especially if you enjoyed the original series, as this prequel answers a ton of questions and expands the world in unique ways. If this is the last we see of Stone Cold, I'd certainly be satisfied with the story we got. But if you made it to the end of this video, I thank you all so much for watching. Keep on leaving me recommendations, whether it be in the YouTube comments or the community Discord where I'm always hiding. But if you'll excuse me, I gotta prepare for my next year just stuck inside.